Welcome into the Fade. I am Clay Travis. He is Todd Furman. We are rolling through all of the big games in the NFL. We now have the college football playoff set. We will discuss that as well. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. And let's start right here, Furman. Pretty monster Monday Night Football game. Biggest and best game of the week going on right here, with the Bills hosting the Patriots. Patriots have won 6 games in a row after starting 2-4. Mac Jones, runaway favorite now to be the NFL's Rookie of the Year. You've got a little bit of a wobbly performance from the Buffalo Bills. The Patriots, if the season were to end right now before they played on Monday night, would be, believe it or not, the #1 overall seed in the AFC. So, Todd Furman, what goes on here? I'm taking the Bills. I'm also taking the over. The number has moved here massively because there are big weather-related conditions, wind in particular. I know you love weather more than anybody I know when it comes to the impact on an NFL game. This has probably got you all giddy. What say you? How are you playing it? And how many times have you checked the weather forecast in the last 48 hours?
I probably check the weather forecast about once an hour, the top of each hour, like old AM radio, every 20 minutes on the nines or whatever the hell it used to be back in the old days. But when you're looking at this game, that's the reason we've seen this total come down, Clay. I mean, it opened up at 45 at FanDuel Sportsbook. We're talking to a shade more than 40 at this point. I think everyone who wants to get involved from that perspective is going to try and figure out exactly how strong the winds will be as we approach kickoff. What kind of lake effect snow we could potentially have. Mac Jones, being a northern Florida kid from Jacksonville, playing his college football in the SEC, may have a little bit of a jolt to the system here. I know Bill Belichick was pretty funny talking about, we practice in heat, we practice in cold, we practice in wet. So we'll see exactly what the game plan looks like. I actually lean the same way as you. I think the number, though, is extremely fair, hovering between that 2.5, 3 threshold. Buffalo can take the us against the world type mentality, as so many people have anointed the Patriots the team to beat in the AFC, given the uneven performances we've grown accustomed to from the Bills. But when you break it all down, I mean, these are the only 2 teams in the NFL that have point differentials better than plus 140. New England riding that 6-game winning streak that you alluded to, the longest in the league right now. And at the same time, you do begin to wonder, who has New England really beaten during this stretch? I mean, you're the biggest Titans fan I know, and Tennessee was able to move the ball at will last week. They just ended up short on downs. They had turnovers in plus territory. So I think Buffalo, even in these adverse conditions, can have some success. And if I was forced to bet the game, I'd be on Buffalo, but probably won't tangle. One prop bet, though, I think could be fun when you're shopping around, and I'm not sure if it's up on FanDuel Sportsbook yet. Over-under for longest field goal. If we're seeing these massive wind gusts, I'd have no problem going under the total in the high 40s.
What about first touchdown to be scored? I took Josh Allen, figuring that maybe there'd be a busted play. He'll be able to roll it in. Maybe you get a goal, first and goal, second and goal type situation where he's the quarterback sneaker. Get him, I think, at 15-1, 15-1-ish, depending on where you're gambling. You can always go gamble at fanduel.com/Clay. Who do you like potentially on the first TD prop? Any other props in addition to that field goal one that you like?
I think Josh Allen is a great bet there at that price. I mean, we saw on Sunday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes go off right around 18-1. He scrambled. And typically, the bigger the game, the more at stake. You're going to see some of these younger quarterbacks that have mobility, willing to take off and run. I mean, if I'm Josh Allen, I'm not running against the Jacksonville Jaguars or games against the Jets. But if I have to extend plays, especially in scoring territory. So can understand where you're coming from there. I would also look, given the weather we're going to see here, at a defensive or special teams touchdown. Maybe New England's able to pick off Josh Allen early in the game and create a short field, or take it back to the house for 6. So when you're talking about some of the unknowns, more than willing to take long shot prices. And I think you found a good amount of value in Josh Allen for that prop.
All right, let's talk about what we saw. I was at the Alabama-Georgia game, the SEC championship game, as my wife's cats and kids' cats have suddenly infiltrated the house because somebody forgot to shut the door downstairs. So if you hear a cat in the background, that's not your house, that's my house.
I was going to say, I'd start to get nervous if I was looking around. I mean, I got a dog, and I'm sure she'd root out any cats that were in here, but it's good to know.
Furman, each of these cats cost me $1,000. I'm not even.
That's actually cheap. I figured you'd be the guy out there buying the ones that look like the Bengal cats. I know they're not legal everywhere.
That's what we have.
They're like our mini Jaguars.
Well, we have a Bengal. $1,000. They're hypoallergenic. And they have destroyed the entire house. We have 2 boys. Yes, they are. I'm allergic to cats because I have a soul and think that cats are awful. And so now we've got 2 of them, and they have destroyed everything in the house, and one of them just ran upstairs. So I was at Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game, and I was blown away. I felt really good. We talked about this before. Into the first quarter, my under and my Georgia Bulldog bet looked good. Then Alabama went off for 24 points in the second quarter, Furman. That's more points than Georgia had given up in an entire game. Bryce Young goes ahead and locks up the overall Heisman Trophy. There's not even any suspense at all.
Yeah, that thing's
Saturday's
That's
event.
done.
And just eviscerates one of the elite defenses we had thought in modern college football history. So Bama's the 1. Michigan's the 2. They destroyed Iowa, although a tough beat if you had the under with Michigan scoring with about a minute to play. Then you have Georgia at the 3, Cincinnati at the 4. Bama opens as a 2-touchdown favorite over Cincinnati. You got Georgia around a 7.5 or 8-point favorite over Michigan. What stands out at you about the college football playoff mix right now? Do you expect, as I do, for it to be a Georgia-Alabama national title game in Indianapolis, which will be its own kind of wild universe because the Big Ten finally gets a national title game to be played in its footprint, and I think it's going to be a total infiltration, southern invasion of the city of Indianapolis.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the SEC teams are the class. I mean, you look at what Georgia has done all season long. I'm not going to say that was an anomaly performance from Georgia, but we've seen it time and time again with Alabama. When nobody gives them credit, everyone writes them off for dead. It's when they take that us against the world mentality. And you saw Nick Saban along with Bill O'Brien and that entire offense go full scorched earth, absolutely shredding Georgia defensively. And if you're Kirby Smart, you're probably spending Sunday in your office going, am I ever going to beat Alabama in a game that matters and finally get over the hump? Well, for Georgia, I think they'll at least get another crack at the Crimson Tide in that national championship game that you referenced. But this is a Michigan team as well, clicking on all cylinders. We saw how good Aiden Hutchinson could be as a one-man wrecking crew on the defensive side. Offensively, I mean, Michigan's offense in that first half, they were the beneficiary of 2 big plays and then kind of wore down the Hawkeyes over the final 30 minutes. I wonder what kind of damage they'll be able to do with some wrinkles in store for Georgia in one of the lower totals you're going to see in a college football playoff game. But I think these numbers are tight. I mean, I made Georgia more than a touchdown favorite. I think Michigan will garner a lot of attention given their current form and sudden skepticism people have about Georgia, specifically their offense, led by Stetson Bennett. Meanwhile, in the other semifinal, I mean, Cincinnati's got their hands full, but if you're going to be a group of 5 team and you're going to have a chance to go out there and make some history, you may as well tangle with the defending champions. You wonder if Alabama gets caught potentially looking past the Bearcats, but that just hasn't been in their program's DNA. So I think you're looking at Alabama and Georgia in a national title matchup. I'm not running, though, to bet either favorite. If I had to pick a side or total in the games right now, I'd actually begin to look over the total in Alabama and Cincinnati. I know Alabama will be without John Mechie, which changes things a little bit, but I think Cincinnati is going to be able to move the ball a little bit. And at 58, you're not asking for any massive performances from either of those two sides.
All right, let's go into the NFL. We talked about Monday Night Football already, but I want to react a little bit to Sunday afternoon football bleeding into the evening. What's up with the Ravens? What's up with Lamar Jackson and that offense? Obviously, Marlon Humphrey, significant injury to their secondary, and the defense has already had a lot of injuries, as has the offense. What did you learn, if anything, from the Steelers-Ravens game? I like the decision by Harbaugh to go for 2 there. They had Mark Andrews open. Lamar Jackson missed him, obviously had a little bit of pressure from T.J. Watt on that play. Are you very convinced that the Ravens are an elite team right now? And did the Steelers get back up from the dead in order to win this game? Break it down for us.
Yeah, I don't think the Ravens are elite by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you can look at their offense, and it's really appeared to be stuck in quicksand for the last, call it 4 weeks. I mean, they put up 16 points against the Browns. They were completely shut down by the Miami Dolphins. And I think the last time they hung 30 on an opponent was the Minnesota Vikings. So Greg Roman and John Harbaugh are going to have to go back to the drawing board and do something to work with Lamar Jackson, because accuracy has never been his strength, but the decision-making seems to be problematic. And he almost looks like a quarterback uncomfortable to trust what his eyes are telling him. I mean, the interception early on in that game when they had a chance on the opening drive to take a lead, I don't even know who he's throwing to in that particular spot. Now, in regards to John Harbaugh electing to go for two, I mean, he came out and said in his post-game press conference, or either this morning, I can't remember when it was, that they were so banged up in the defensive backfield that they were really left with no other choice. Marlon Humphrey, it appears he's going to miss some extended time. Tavon Young was dealing with a little bit of flu-like symptoms out there. So they were clearly depleted, because under normal circumstances, I'm kicking the extra point and I'm going to trust my defense being able to keep Big Ben and that Steelers offensive attack at bay, knowing only a touchdown beats me. But in that fourth quarter, the Steelers mounted 3 scoring drives. So when you look at the decision, I can't fault him. And you're right, better execution. Mark Andrews is walking into the end zone for a hard-fought victory. But I think that was a little bit of smoke and mirrors from the Steelers. Let's see if Big Ben can run it back on a short week against a wounded Vikings team that's going to be down one of its key cogs in Adam Thielen. Dalvin Cook going to miss the game as well. So I think the Steelers were able to stave off execution for a week, and I think the Ravens are a bit of a paper tiger right now. I mean, honestly, Clay, you dig into the Ravens' resume, I mean, there's a legitimate chance this team could be 3-7, 4-6. So I know when we talked last Thursday, I was stunned to find out if the season ended going into the weekend that the Ravens would have been the 1 seed in the AFC. They've been flirting with disaster, and it finally caught up to them in Heinz Field.
No doubt. I mean, they had a 66-yard field goal to beat the Lions in Detroit by Justin Tucker. Otherwise, they would have been in a really tough spot before now. All right. Did we learn anything else substantial out of the Sunday action? Kind of look over it. I like to kind of start to look at the playoff picture now when we get to this spot in time. And if you were to go in and look at the playoff race right now, Furman, as we mentioned to start off the show, the Patriots would be your 1 seed. I'm doing the AFC first. Titans, your 2 seed. We just talked about the Ravens. They're your 3. Kansas City, the offense still a little bit wobbly, but seems to be getting itself back together again. Buffalo has fallen all the way to the 5. And if they lost this game, they would be close to out of the playoffs. That's how much of a spread 7-5 versus 8-4 would be. The Chargers are sitting at 7-5. Bengals are 7-5. You just mentioned Pittsburgh at 6-5-1. Colts are 7-6. And then you got Vegas, the Browns, and the Broncos all sitting at 6-6. Miami's gotten hot. They fought all the way back to 6-7. Essentially, my question for you, Furman, is this. Who are you confident in the AFC, or do you want to withhold judgment till you see what happens in tonight's game between the Bills and the Patriots?
So if I'm looking to try and identify some value in the futures market right now, I have skepticism about all of these teams. I don't think there is a team 1 through 53 that you go, hey, look, they're clearly the team to beat. So I'd look at a team on the outside looking in right now in the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, they've been so close in a couple of these games. I mean, how much different is the narrative if they don't blow a double-digit lead against the Bucs last weekend? They had a suffocating performance defensively. I know it's the Houston Texans, but they're starting to figure out what their DNA is, and it's all built around Jonathan Taylor. So it allows Carson Wentz to operate with, underappreciated weapons in the passing game. I think defensively they're above average, and I really believe the Colts are going to have a lot to say about who comes out of the AFC this season. You mentioned Kansas City. There's no doubt that this offense has looked better in fits and spurts, but I think the book is out on kind of how to defend them. So to Kansas City's credit, they played a game that was relatively tight to the vest because they could lean on their defense yesterday, and they were never truly threatened by Teddy Bridgewater, who was hobbled, and a Denver offense that was essentially Javonte Williams and not much else. So Kansas City's going to be there when the dust settles. I think the Colts will be there. We'll talk about the Bills a little bit more. We'll see how they handle New England, of course, tonight. But those teams will play twice in the span of 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think it's as wide open as we've seen in the AFC, and it's why we all love the NFL. The team that I obviously neglected there is your beloved Titans. Let's see if they can get healthy at the skill positions, because under their current construct, there's no chance they get out of the AFC. But suddenly, if you're talking Derrick Henry back in the fold, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, they look to be a much more dynamic offense paired up with a defense that's shown an ability to get after opposing quarterbacks.
NFC. Cardinals 10-2. They got back Kyler Murray and Hopkins. Green Bay 9-3, Tampa Bay 9-3, Dallas 8-4, the Rams 8-4. Believe it or not, the Washington football team has fought themselves up into the playoffs right now at 6-6. Then you've got the 49ers at 6-6. The Eagles are sitting at 6-7. The Minnesota Vikings coming off of a brutal loss against the Lions, sitting at 5-7. The Panthers have fired their offensive coordinator, the once white-hot Joe Brady. And then you got the Falcons and also the Saints, who are sitting at 5-7. How would you break down the NFC right now from your perspective, Furman? Who are the teams that should be considered the favorites in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the NFC is a little bit more of a clean picture. Tampa, for me, still the team to beat out there. This is a side offensively that's going to get better once Antonio Brown heals up and serves his suspension. You just throw another weapon into the mix. We've seen this Tampa defense kind of get by over the first 12 games of the season. They'll be just fine when it matters most. I'm not willing to buy into the Green Bay Packers. I haven't been for the last couple of seasons unless they get Jair Alexander back and some of their pass rush help. Arizona and the Rams are going to be interesting. I know they play a week from today, so we'll get a better indication of where they are. The Cardinals, they check every box for you, but you wonder about the experience level for meaningful football from Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray as well. So I can't say, despite the way that they're being priced and performing on the road, that they're the runaway freight train in the NFC. So I guess if I had to pick an NFC champion right now, it's going to be Tampa, just based on Tom's pedigree. I think they'll be healthier. So we're probably talking about Tampa having a chance to defend its Lombardi trophy if they continue to trend in the right direction.
Couple of games looking ahead, obviously, to the NFL. You mentioned that Steelers-Vikings game on Thursday. Vikings a 3-point favorite. What do you have any early leans on that game at all?
Even Minnesota being undermanned, down a couple of their weapons on offense, that would be my lean, because I think the Steelers could be a little hard-pressed to match the emotion and get off the deck so quickly, knowing what it took to knock off the Ravens on Sunday. Minnesota's season's hanging in the balance. Talk about a frustrating outfit. I mean, 7 losses this year by a combined 28 points. I mean, a play here, a play there. Suddenly Minnesota has a chance to win the division, but here we are because they can't execute, especially on the defensive side. So as the number comes down, even without Thielen and Cook, I mean, the Vikings would be my lean. And I actually think the game has a great chance to go over the total as well.
We got a bunch of divisional matchups. Just going to hit several of them with you. Ravens-Browns, that could have some significance. Raiders-Chiefs, Cowboys and the WFT, and in terms of what might be going on. And then you got an interesting game with the 49ers and the Bengals, the Bills and the Bucks, and then, of course, the Rams-Cardinals Monday night game, which will be really intriguing. Any of these games or others giving you early pause or early concern or early excitement as you look ahead to Thursday and then to Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals and 49ers is a game where I think there's a huge coaching mismatch in favor of San Francisco. Now, we're going to have to keep our eyes on the injury report and see if Fred Warner comes back on the defensive side for San Francisco, or they'll get Deebo Samuel back into the fold on the offensive side. But there's a reason that when you look at this number, the Bengals are modest 1-point home favorites. I think Zach Taylor is a little bit in over his head, and I really expect San Francisco to fly across the country and get the win there. Not a game I've bet yet, but definitely one on my radar. When you look at Kansas City and Las Vegas, I mean, let's see if the Chiefs can go out there and find, the capabilities to boat race an opponent. We know they did it on Sunday Night Football at Allegiant Stadium against Vegas. The big question for me will be, is Vegas is willing to change its defensive DNA and go to kind of that too high safety look that's caused problems for the Chiefs, because they didn't do it the first time around and Gus Bradley paid the price. As far as Washington and Dallas, you've seen early money come in on the home underdog in Washington. Defensively, they're rounding into shape, but you lose a key cog in Logan Thomas, and I think it takes away some of the red zone effectiveness. They'll hope that J.D. McKissick is back, a high-volume receiver coming out of the backfield. But I think that game, when you look at the total, would be inclined to explore the under. Hopefully we get a little bit of weather in the nation's capital on a track that can be relatively slow. Hard for Washington for the second straight week, though, to overcome a rest disadvantage. And effectively, a Cowboys win on the road probably seals up the division for them. So it should be a great game Sunday at FedEx Field.
I'm going to be, I think, at the Jags-Titans game. I think there are still tickets available for people out there who may be intrigued by it. By the way,
shocker. Tickets available for Titans-Jags. I figured it wasn't going to be standing room only, or that maybe Urban Meyer was going to invite you to stay in the box or have a sideline pass so you could pal around with your boy.
I'll tell you this might be the first time any team from Tennessee ever beats Urban Meyer, so there's something to enjoy about that. Also, this is not the Thursday night game. I don't know how many years in a row it feels like Titans-Jags was Thursday night football special.
Thank
we don't
God.
have that anymore.
Thank God we don't have color rush jerseys between the Titans and Jags, with the Titans in all powder blue and the mustard yellow that we saw from the Jags in a couple of those iterations.
Any thoughts from you? I know it's a little bit early, but on any of the bowl matchups, is there anything you love there, or do you wait and see, hey, who's actually going to play? What team is actually going to be motivated? Because college bowl season has become as much of an analysis as who wants to be there as it has been who's the better team.
Yeah, for sure. And we've seen a couple of line moves already. I mean, limits are relatively low. We saw the Tennessee Volunteers go from a 3-point underdog in the Music City Bowl to a 3-point favorite. I don't think odds makers built in home field advantage, and you have to imagine the Tennessee fan base is going to fill up that building. And you're talking about essentially Neyland Stadium West, if my Tennessee geography is correct there. So can understand why that number's been on the move. The other game that's moved a ton is also Western Michigan and Nevada. It appears that Jay Norvell is going to leave Reno and head to Colorado State. Interesting that you're going to move within the conference, especially in the Mountain West, but he was on the low end of the pay scale. UNR doesn't have the same money that Colorado State does, who just fired Steve Adazio. And at the same time, a lot of speculation that we won't see Carson Strong, projected by many to be a first-round draft pick. So that's why you've seen that number go from 6 down to 2.5, 3. I think it'll continue further because you'd have to believe that two of Nevada's top offensive weapons without their head coach and starting quarterback that could be playing on Sundays in Nat Turner and Romeo Dobbs could both be out for that game as well. So like you said, it's all about availability, which players will be out there, which players won't. It's a lot of fun, but you're going to have to try and follow the breadcrumbs that are out there because you will see comprehensive line movements with inevitable suspensions. And if we look at some of the bigger games, I was surprised to see Pittsburgh actually open up just a 3.5-point favorite against Michigan State. Kenny Pickett's given indications that he wants to be out there and play. And I think it's a massive game for two programs to build on some of their regular season success. And in Pitt's case, the ACC championship, because they could bring back a loaded roster next year if Coach Narduzzi is able to hit the transfer portal and maybe lure in a quarterback that wants to assume the reins with, one of the top receivers in the country in Jordan Addison.
Last question for you, Furman. If the college football playoff had just ignored results and they had picked the 4 best teams from a Vegas perspective, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, who's the 4th? I'm guessing those are the first three. Who's the 4th team?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the best overall teams, I mean, they have 4 of the top 5. The only team that would have been rated higher than Cincinnati and even Michigan by the slimmest of margins would have been Ohio State. So for the first time in a long time, the committee did a great job of not only taking the best teams, but also the most deserving. And Cincinnati has proved their mettle. I mean, they pushed Georgia last year in a big-time bowl game. Do I think they're going to be able to upset Alabama? Probably not. But you have to give them a shot. I mean, they went out there scheduled aggressively. It wasn't their fault that Indiana wasn't any good this season. They went on the road and beat Notre Dame in their own building. And to be quite honest, other than Oregon going into Columbus to knock off Ohio State, you can make the legitimate case that as far as a season-defining victory, Cincinnati winning in South Bend was one of the biggest. And we'll see exactly what Luke Fickell has up his sleeve to get things going, especially if the Oregon Ducks may or may not come calling to try and lure Fickell out to the Pacific Northwest as they'll search for a head coach with Mario Cristobal taking over at Miami.
Is that who you'd put at the top of the Oregon board right now?
I think it makes a lot of sense that you have to try and at least put the phone calls in. Fickell being a Midwest guy, I don't know if he'd want to make that move. And then if you're Oregon, do you always have in the back of your mind that within 2 or 3 seasons, if Ryan Day were to bolt or another high-profile job in the Big Ten opened up, did Fickell immediately move? But I also think, and there was a report out there, so it's not like I'm trying to be clairvoyant in this, that if you're Oregon, you call up Chip Kelly and see, hey, Chip, it's going to be a lot tougher to recruit to UCLA. You're going to always play second fiddle to Lincoln Riley and the coup he's already pulled off in recruiting, just inside of a week. Would you want to come back to your old stomping grounds and see if old Phil Knight will open up the checkbook? So I don't think there's a lot of acrimony between those two, and it's going to probably be a much easier path in the Pac-12 North to win conference championships than it will be competing year in, year out against Lincoln Riley and the potential juggernaut that's brewing at the Coliseum.
Great stuff as always, Todd Furman. I am Clay Travis. He is Todd Furman. We'll be back on Thursday as we get ready for that Vikings game against the Steelers. Enjoy Monday night. I'm on the Bills. He's on the Bills. We're both on the over, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. This is The Fade.